Welcome to the ODOT Collector app webinar. My name is Paula Hyman from the Ohio LTAP Center, and I'll be your technical support today. Just a couple of items. If you have questions throughout this presentation, please type those into the questions box, and our presenters will address your questions periodically throughout the presentation. The webinar is being recorded. Providing that the recording is successful, the YouTube link and a copy of the presentation will be emailed to all participants and uploaded to our LTAP website. Immediately following this webinar, there's a survey for you to complete, so please make sure you do that. Thank you in advance for your participation, and I'll pass things off to Ms. Sarah Wade, Program Manager, Division of Opportunity, Diversity and Inclusion Access and Equity Section. Sarah?
Thanks, Paula. Good afternoon, everybody. As Paula stated, I'm Sarah Wade. I am ODOT's ADA 504 Program Manager. So basically, I just wanted to do a refresher for some of you and introduce some of you to a tool that I have mentioned several times over the past 3 or 4 years that ODOT has always intended to make available for the local governments to use to help with their ADA data collection. And we finally have that happening in the very near future. So we wanted to introduce or reintroduce you to the tool. And as Paula stated, there will be a survey that at the end that's very important to gauge the interest in using the tool to make sure that we have enough technical support for that when we do roll that out here in the next couple of months. So I have several slides included as just reference slides. Like I said in previous presentations, I have included this information, but I thought that it would be good to have it all in one place. If you want to go back and look at this information, take it back to your agency and discuss later on. So I've listed the legal framework for the Americans with Disabilities Act in Section 504 of the Rehab Act, and a little bit about those items. So why we're here is Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act, otherwise referenced as ADA, and access to civic life by people with disabilities is a fundamental goal of the ADA. So to ensure that goal is met, Title II requires state and local governments to make their programs and services accessible to persons with disabilities. And this requirement applies not only to policy changes, but also to ensure that all people with disabilities can take part in, benefit from the program services and events of state and local governments. But this also extends to physical access at government facilities, including those items in the rights of way. The primary purpose of the transportation-related ADA program in state and local governments is to ensure that pedestrians with disabilities have access to utilize the transportation system in a safe manner. And part of Federal Highways regulatory responsibility under Title II is to ensure that recipients of federal aid, which all state and local governments in one way or another receive some sort of federal aid. And those entities are then responsible for roadways and pedestrian facilities, and to make sure that everyone has equal access and equitable opportunity to use those sidewalks, curb ramps, pedestrian buttons, etc. So part of Federal Highways responsibility is to make sure that state DOTs, so ODOT, for example, and then any of ODOT's subrecipients, so any local municipality, local government, are informed of their responsibilities to provide that access, and to ensure that recipients and subrecipients are applying appropriate accessibility standards to all transportation-related assets and facilities. So that is something that we have really focused on heavily the last 5 to 6 years, is to make sure that not only does ODOT have its programs in order, but that we are also providing technical assistance, education, resources, and tools to the locals to help with their efforts as well. So our physical facilities and buildings have to be accessible. If you are a transportation provider, you also have to make sure your transportation services are accessible. And the assets in the public rights of way, which is what we're going to focus on today, must also be accessible. Specifically, pedestrian overpasses, underpasses, sidewalks, pedestrian ramps, signal heads and push buttons, on-street parking, including parking meters and crosswalks and refuge islands. So all of the components mean that planning organizations, consultants, contractors, construction crews, state DOTs, and local governments all have responsibilities under the ADA. Also, this is a question that comes up quite a bit anytime I give any kind of presentation, is about a grandfather clause. There is no grandfather clause in the ADA. Small municipalities are not exempt from complying with Title II or the ADA because of their size. It's just if you are part of a very small municipality, meaning 50 or less, 49 or less, I guess, employees, that just means you still have to follow the same requirements. You just don't have to have a published written self-evaluation or transition plan. But any entity with 50 or more employees at any time over the course of a year must have a published self-evaluation and transition plan. And when I say published, that simply means made available on your municipality's website. Again, these next two slides are just included as reference because they do, these are a topic of lots of questions anytime these kind of things come up. So the self-evaluation, an ADA self-evaluation, is basically an asset inventory. All public entities are required to comply with the requirements of the ADA, whether or not you've completed your self-evaluation or not. However, the asset inventory is vitally important to identify all of your agency's assets so that you can assess them and work on correcting those deficiencies. And that is where really the collector tool comes in as could be a very large helpful piece in collecting that data for your municipality. Then once that data is collected, the transition plan is then the next step in that process, which is basically a plan to identify the best correction plan for those deficiencies. On ODOT's website in several different places, there are lots of technical assistance, resources, and tools. First is on LTAP's page for ADA transition plan template and resources. Once this collector app is rolled out for the locals to use, we will also make sure the links to that information is there as well. But not only is a transition plan template and self-evaluation template there, there's also some completed examples from other cities, villages, counties, and townships of various sizes. There's also some facts about ADA 504 and some ADA design resources that would be very helpful. Next is the ADA design resources on our roadway engineering's webpage. And it contains lots of ADA related design resources for each individual type of asset, including some instructional videos we had made a couple of years ago. So the link there is included for those resources as well. And again, once the collector piece is live for the locals, we will include the information on this page as well. So the collector application came about because ODOT needed a long-term, reliable, and sustainable data collection mechanism for our assets in the rights of way. And my office worked with the Office of Technical Services, the Office of Asset Inventory and Systems Integration, and now it's the Office of Data Governance, where the collector app for ADA assets in the rights of way was launched on May 10th, 2018 for ODOT users. And that captured ODOT's assets in the rights of way. So all of our curb ramps, pedestrian buttons, crosswalks, signal heads outside of incorporated areas. We are anticipating being able to launch this application for locals to utilize sometime in the first quarter of 2022. And when we were developing the application, we developed it with local users in mind, knowing that not everybody has the same amount of resources that ODOT does. So we wanted to make sure that anybody could, with some simple training, could utilize the application, to where once the locations are entered into the application, you simply take some measurements, enter that data into the application, and then it determines the compliance. You only have to take the measurements. It's not up to the user to decide whether the asset or the individual component is compliant or not. The application will do that for you, and it will pinpoint what things are correct and what things are incorrect. And Cody Lape is going to go into a demonstration of that here in just a few minutes. The collector application, which is also the mobile side, is being referenced as called field maps, will allow you to collect, measure, and assess the following asset types: crosswalks, curb ramps, on-street parking, pedestrian push-button structures, the actual pedestrian push buttons, as well as refuge islands and sidewalks. So like I mentioned and Paula briefly mentioned, is that in order to properly plan for the local government rollout, at the end of this presentation, we will be sending out a brief survey. And please help us answer those questions and return the survey as soon as possible. So like I said, we have enough, we have your interest gauged so that we know how much technical support we will need on our side, and what kind of different training pieces you may need in order to utilize that at your agency or municipality. So now I am going to turn this over to Cody, who's going to give an overview of the application and a demonstration.
Hello, everyone. Just as Sarah kind of mentioned, I'm just going to go over a few more things, and in addition, just showing how the application all works. But as my name is Cody Lape, I'm one of our ODOTs districts, District 1 Transportation Asset Management Coordinator. So my job was to take any of our enterprise assets, as ADA is, and make sure our district goes through and does appropriate collection of that asset. So right away with the ADA, when it first came out, you know, we kind of originally was back to paper method beforehand, and since then kind of moved to this technology side to help streamline this collection of it. So overall, for my presentation, just kind of want to briefly mention how we went from paper to technology, and then I really get into that live demo of the application. So hopefully today you're going to be able to see the desktop side of things, so web browser, how we can make these collections and so forth, be able to see it from back in the office where information is, as well as then move to mobile and how you can collect that out in the field. And then to wrap it all up, you know, how ODOT, or how our Tech Services Division, Data Governance with the Asset Management, created our quick reports, so you can be able to very quickly see where issues may be at and so forth. So again, like Sarah said, I'm not going to go over all the ADA elements. Before, we kind of track these all kind of in the same method, but kind of separate. So now finally we have everything in one application for all the ADA elements for our compliance for our construction and design. The other part, like I said, again, helps us to be able to utilize the computer side and mobile devices. The other benefit with this application is we have date stamps. Once you add or save data, we have a date stamp to it. And all it doesn't sound very reasonable or to care about that. But what we found with ADA is, today we'll go measure a curb ramp, for example, and everything looks all compliant, looks good to go. But a matter of a month from now, we have a semi that could have ran over the curb a little bit, ran onto that ramp area. And if we didn't add a thicker base to that ramp, it could now push to non-compliant. So at least we have historical evidence of, well, at this date it was compliant, and have that information available very easily. The other parts of that, the application allows us to take multiple photos. Photos, videos, or other attachments that you may need for that specific ADA element that you want to track and log. So I'll show you all those as well. So very briefly, I just want to go over the slides, kind of calling this application out, and then I get into a live demo just for after this training. If it's something you really like, and as Sarah's trying to gauge the interest for local access, you can take it back to your other management and show them these slides and so forth, and maybe that help back and support that direction if you do want to utilize this application. So overall, this is a photo of when you first get the web page opened up and you sign in with your credentials. You'll have to have a credential established for you. That kind of helps us to, not just us, ODOT, our divisions as a whole, to know who's the last person to make a change to that specific element to our database. So we have that date stamp, we have that user stamp as well. The next one, again, kind of more or less just the way how this ESRI web application, where our icons are established a little bit. So again, you can kind of see here, we have the reports you can get directly through this application. You can do a quick query on, where's the compliance and non-compliance. You can add some other edits, capabilities, and batch edits, and take other measurements as well. Like I said, I'll get all into that here in just a minute. Again, here's into that. Here's how the legend would open up off to the side. You'll be able to see what that symbology means and references. And then at that same point, you click on that dot, and you'll be able to get all that information associated to that ADA element that we have established for collections for compliancy. And last but not least, in these photos you can see here, we have a very obvious, that red square are non-compliant elements of ADA. So this was a project through an area that has been about, I believe, 10 years now. And then unfortunately with our values for compliancy, we see that these ones are not compliant. So the next time we're in this area and we check for a project, we'll immediately know that, hey, we need to take some emphasis to make these elements back compliant once again. So again, like Sarah was mentioning, to help with your transition plan, this will be very obviously to show you which ones are not compliant. You can run a report, and then that helps you to better make plans on replacing those ones. So that's more or less the web application. And again, like I'm going to get into a live demo of that as well. But here is also a dashboard that has been created as well. So you can very quickly see at a very high level, this is the whole state. At the moment when I took this, I don't have my date on here, but it was a recent snapshot of our collection. So you can see where all of our counts are. Majority of our collection is really heavy into the curb ramps, state maintained curb ramps. And then of those, you can see where those are not compliant, or some of them that inventory is not completed. So we still have to take time to go update that information. Again, this is one of the few tools for dashboards or reports that comes with this application. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and get into my demonstration side of here. Just to very quickly show you, like I mentioned, you will have to utilize this application that we have here. You'll get this account created, and for that account request will pretty much be through Sarah. We'll kind of give our division of data governance the okay that yes, this person's approved to be able to utilize this application. So for example, here's a test account that we have. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in with that account. This is our test environment. So give me 1 second to get this, just got one little tweak to do here. And I get back into the demonstration. So I'm going to zoom to our area. Traditionally, when you sign into the application, it's going to be to a full broad picture of the whole state. The one I'm showing you right now is the current enhancements that we're looking at to the applications for a few more compliance values. So as of today, my District 1, I'm out of our Lima area. I'm going to go to our Lima headquarters. So I can demonstrate the desktop right to the mobile version. You can see where these dots change and so forth. So right now, here's our district office. You know, we can get further in depth with this training of the application. So I'm not going to go through every individual button at this point in time. So that training would come very shortly after, but I'm going to go through the high level. So as the legend, again, like I mentioned, you can scroll through here. The more things you have on, the more things you have capable to view and see that information. Now, you know, right now it's a very limited group cluster. So where do you go from there? Well, I want to go to my layers to be able to turn on more values. So as this application, as we said, it's primarily built for ODOT staff at this point, but utilizing locals that give you guys permissions. We're going to have a tab specifically for the non-state inventory for you to have that control to make those edits and so forth. So right now, that's why that one was blank. But if I were to go into here, I can see which ones are active state maintained. I can see which ones are non-active. What is the difference there? For ODOT is the sake of active is currently the current condition. Non-active is what was proposed or what has been previously at that location. So if you do have a project come through that is going to replace some of those elements of ADA because they're not compliant, you can go ahead and add a proposed value in here and be able to see those very quickly. You know, be able to turn on a layer, what's available for you to see. So currently at this point in time, I'm just going to turn on the active curb ramps. Let me turn on a couple of these here. And as you see, as I'm clicking here, that's adding those values right back in here. So that's something that's very convenient to be able to see this information layer as well as your, you know, what values you have turned on and off. So as of now, I'm just going to leave those ones on. The other value, as I mentioned, there's attribute table. So you can set this attribute table to only show you what is in the extent view. So as of now, as this buffers here for a little bit, again, this is our test environment, so I may just switch over to our production side so you can see this a little better. Give it just a minute here. I guess live demo with the test didn't want to quite work, so let's go back to our production one here. Sorry for that. Second. All right. Not that's new dots here. For example, back to the attribute table. These will be isolated to what exact ADA element you're looking for. Because I have no on-street parking in this location, nothing showing up here, and I have it through math extent. So I'm going to turn it to curb ramps. Again, I guess I don't have nothing in my extent at this moment. But once I zoom out, if you get the dots jump in here, the data starts filling down here. So this would be utilized more or less. You just want to see in the office very quickly what an area could entail. Let's say that wasn't enough for you. You want to go right to that element and see that information. This is the simplest thing you can do here. This takes 1 minute to clean up. Again, this is referencing all the ADA elements and doing a refresh to re-show the most accurate information. So that's why it's taking just a tad bit longer for it to buffer here at the moment. So anyways, to see directly the ADA element information, all you gotta do is select on it. And then sometimes when you have clusters like this, I'll take just a minute to get buffer here, sorry. Sometimes when you get too close to two elements, I went ahead and selected here. It would show you what options are available, and you could slide through what those values may be. But as this curb ramp here, that is a compliant curb ramp because there is no red square around it on the outside of it. As I go ahead and select on this, I can again scroll down and see all the information that's pertinent to this curb ramp. What type of curb ramp, what is all the slope values, the width values, and so forth. And then as I also mentioned again, here is where we have the access to attach photos. And right there's the photo. You very quickly be able to click on that information and be able to see that photo attachment. So the simple use of this application, I want to keep that to be the primary view on the tools to be able to show you through. I'm going to show you how now to add or edit or manipulate these elements here. So I'm going to go back to the test application. This was working here. So let me go ahead and start this aside. Give me one moment. See my computer just, oops, I guess we're gonna go back to the other one here. All right, so let's just utilize this one here. So for example, let's add just a whole new, let's say I'm gonna add a whole new curb ramp to my facility here. As the aerial cleans up here. All you have to do to add a whole new element, go ahead and like I mentioned, turn on your edit capabilities here, your edit tool. Then you go ahead and find that element that you want to add to the system. So I'm gonna say curb ramp. Once it's selected, I can see where I want to put the curb ramp. And right here, we have two sidewalks that allows us to go to our parking lot over here. So from this, allows me to go ahead and populate all the information I want. Some of these are drop downs. So we take the time to build these out. So no capability of editing errors. We know what we want to see in those fields. So allows us drop downs. Same thing for date slicers. You can go ahead and click on the date and be able to change what date it was. So installation date, let's say this was installed, quite a few years ago, let's say in 2016, December 6th of 2016. So you can leave that in there. We also do have the capability of making certain fields required, other ones not. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put a couple more things in here just so we can see this information. Let's say curb ramp slope is 9%, making this one non-compliant curb ramp. And we just put a couple more fields in here and let's say, all right, for the time being, we'll just go ahead and put this in here just like this. I'm going to hit close. The way our application is, immediately whenever you're adding those fields, it's actually saving it right to the system. So I zoom out just real quick, and you'll see this dot will be shown in here. There it is. The same thing of if I did want to add or edit. Again, this is the mobile sites or the desktop site, so you can do this all through the desktop if you need to, but again, all these values should be collected from the field. All I gotta do is just click on it again in the edit, and then I can go ahead and edit some more information to it. If we also wanted to, we could very easily go ahead and choose a file. For example, if we had a PDF of a plan set, I can go ahead and add this PDF right to this curb ramp and be ready in there. So now with that information, I've just turned off the edit function. It's no longer here. Next time I click on it, I'm not in edit mode, I'm in view. So now anything I click on it, I'm not gonna be able to change or manipulate that data. It's right there. If I wanna see that attachment, here it is. So it's all viewable and ready to go. So it's very quickly, as I added a dot here through the desktop, if I were to do this on my iPad, which I'm going to demonstrate here very shortly, you'll see that dot very quickly transfers right over here to this application. So I'm going to go ahead. This is pretty much I think there's much that we want to go ahead and go over on our web application. I'll be able to come back to this here very quickly here in just a moment. So let me switch gears to our mobile application. So at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and slide this over here. I got my iPad set up here for you guys to be able to see this. So let me switch them to our production environment. So that's not working for me at the moment. All right, give me 1 second. Sorry, I gotta get signed back in again here. It seemed to sign me out here. All right, so now I'm back in the application for a mobile side. So for example, when you sign into the field application, you can get a list of all the other asset groups. If that is a case that once ODOT gets more time into, we can allow those access. But at this point in time, you'd see what you have access to, and I have ADA selected for the time being. So just as that dot I added in the web application, you see it's already there at our facility. So at this point in time, I can then again select it, scroll through, see its information. I can go to attachments and see what the attachments are and download them as well. Take just a minute for that to download and view. There's that attachment. But now as that dot, I want to go ahead and make changes to it. There's 2 ways you can do that with this application. Scroll to the far bottom, and you see this little edit with a pencil with it. I'm going to select on that. At that point in time, I'm able to then, just like the web application, I'm in edit mode. So now I can start selecting through. I forgot to take the landing values. So I'm going to add those values in here very quickly. I forgot other values to be added for the detectable warning device. So I'm adding those in here. Again, I'm not going to go through and populate everything at this moment, but as that information is populated, I then at the same time want to add a new photo because that was just the PDF of the plan, let's say. Now I want to go ahead and wrong thing. I want to take a photo. So very quickly, I just open up my camera with it, take a photo, I want to use that photo, and now it's associated to this curb ramp. Now before it's all saved and done, we have to hit that submit in the upper right hand side. So hit submit here, it's submitted, and it's in the application. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to go ahead and show that the web application again on my screen here. Here's the same dot, but as very quickly as I added that dot into this application from the web app, it viewed onto the tablet. Now I'm going to go ahead and select on this dot again from my computer, and I can see the new information added. Here's my landing information, and then if I look at the attachments, there's a new photo. So the other convenience with this here has been in saving, even myself, as I can describe for ODOT, you know, we may have one inspector that's taking these values out in the field, and they have a concern with one curb ramp. They can very quickly add that information, take a photo in the field, and then call their supervisor or call a construction engineer and state, hey, I just saw this, here's a problem I have with it, can you validate it for me? So they're very easy from a computer, be able to sign in, take a look at this, and be able to see that photo very quickly. So that was how quickly it goes from the mobile side back to the tablet or back to the desktop. So let me get back into the tablet mode here. Let me see if I can hide that. It seems like that the team's logo information is going to disappear there for me. So going back to the dot, you know, if I want to add a whole new, let's say, sidewalk to this inventory, that blue circle in the upper left-hand side, that's supposed to be my location. I am in a building, a steel building, so at that point, my accuracy is way off. But if I go in the field, iPads traditionally have an accuracy of 10 to 15 feet. So when you're outside, taking this information, you should be right on that actual curb, ramp, sidewalk, or crosswalk, and it'll be able to see that location as you're out there. But let's say I want to add a whole new dot. Very quickly, again, the same way from the web application, I can come in here and identify I need to add a crosswalk to connect my curb ramps together. So how I can very easily, it's going to automatically default to your location where that circle is. But once I touch the screen, so let me go back to that again and hit discard and add a new dot, let's say crosswalk, it goes directly to the center's red. So at that point, I say add a point. I'm gonna say use location. And again, it's gonna drop it right where my pin was. Now, if that dropped in the wrong location, all I have to do is adjust that crosshair to go exactly where I want this crosswalk to go. And then again, where it used to say add point, it says update point. I'm gonna select that, and then it changes that location right there. So from that, that's how very quickly you can add. As you see here for a crosswalk, we don't have that much information to be able to collect for crosswalks at this point in time. Our next enhancement, we are adding a few more fields for kind of a compliance item to take a look at them. But as of now, with this application, as you see, there's not many fields you can see or be able to need to collect. So let's just go ahead. Let's say it's a longitudinal. There's no other AD issues. And again, for a comment for this one here, I'm just going to call it a test. Again, you can put whatever you want, county road, whatever it may be, crossing state route 123, and you put that value in there. Again, let's go ahead and take another photo just to show you how quickly this loads up in here. And I'm just going to hit submit again. So at this point in time, this is how very easily going between the two applications it's going to connect and go through. Oops. Looks like my connection got lost. Let me update this one more time. Second. That's a first. All right, hey, we're back again. So as that dot, how we can be able to change these and make these manipulations. The other part that kind of benefits our field users is the part as, again, like I mentioned, a field inspector, had an issue they wanted to check. I could do the other part. If I'm in the office and I have a user out there collecting information and I saw that they're, let's say a crosswalk, they forgot to put what type of crosswalk it is. I can say, hey, go ahead and find crosswalk 123 and please re-edit that, or please make changes to that crosswalk. As you see here at the bottom left-hand side, there is a directions link. So I can very quickly select on that dot, and then I can say, hey, go ahead and take me to that crosswalk, and I'll hit Google Maps. And that's going to immediately take me right to that location where it needs to be. Again, where my dot is, I don't know, it's taking me a little bit longer route, but hey, at least it's still taking me to that exact location where to make those changes and so forth. Let's go ahead and get back into this application. That's another benefit we have there. The other one too, some of our aerials and base maps, again, you can do the same thing. You can do this same thing with the web as well. We have a category for our base maps. And what this could help you out with as well, right now it's default to our default for ODOT, the most recent aerial, and then some street names with it. But let's say that the name's just not coming through. I can change that base map. Now all of a sudden I can see that, oh, I'm at Bible and North College Street. That's where these are. I can add that as a comment as well into this information. We do have some other base maps that different times when you're collecting, these do come in handy. You'll find out when you start utilizing it. There's quite a few times, I know it sounds a little weird, but I use this colored pencil just so I get those street names for every location. But then once I get that name, I go right back to my imagery hybrid, for example. Out of here as well, again, we have some other parts. You can see a legend. You can take some measurements out here. So again, the measurements are based off the iPad. So I can change this to feet. If I want to take a length of the crosswalk, I can be able to click one spot and click again. And between those two, it's 31.44 feet. Now again, hopefully that the inspector has a tape measure or has a measuring wheel, and they get that value that way. But if you did need a quick value just for validation sake, that's available as well. Done. So with the sake there of the collector side, this is where the field app map is what this application is called through ESRI. That's where this allows you to collect all this information out inside the field. So I'm going to go back to my web app, the computer side, to kind of go over the last few functions that I think are key here as this application. So as of now, as this curb ramp, I added, my computer's just syncing back up here for a moment. I know for a fact this curb ramp, as I place this in here, was 9% ramp slope, which our compliance value is 8.33. So that one's not compliant, but it has no red square. So the issue is with this, once you add a dot, it does not immediately tell you if it's compliant or not, but we have a overnight script that will be ran, of course, I said overnight, and it will calculate whether it's compliant or not, as well as if it needs to go into a report for QC and so forth. And that's very simple. If you wanted to do it yourself and you didn't want to wait that night, you go collect information. You come in a few minutes before you have to leave. You come in here, this update attributes. I'm going to go ahead and hit execute. This is going to take a few minutes to process here, but it's going to go through and update all the other 88 elements that were added for the day till this report was ran, and then update it. So again, as I select on this dot, this location information, it is something we want to record with all of our elements for ODOT for asset management purposes. We want to know what county it's in. We want to know what district it's in, what route, and what mile marker locations, as well as latitude, longitude. Those values are very simple calculated from that exact dot. So we don't need a user to know that, hey, you're in X county or you're in X city. We should be able to utilize the system to do the work for us. So that's where this application will collect that information as well as check the compliance side as well. It's going to take about another minute for this to run here, so give me a minute. All this extra lingo or this text in here, nothing you need to worry about. It's just something the backend server for this to run is processing and doing this doing the updates and so forth. Yes, we have quite a few collections going on at the moment today. All right, well, while that's loading, let me go ahead and get into the mode of our reports and dashboards as well to kind of show those off. The reports are very easily accessed. We have a handful of ways to get to them. You can click right on this little link here, and here's the other elements that are available. If you didn't want to utilize that, we have this function down here, and you can go right to that report, a QC report or non-compliant report. These ones here are actually are the update the report. Sorry, these ones here are to update the report. So if I wanted to update a QC report, I would have to run it here. So let's just go right to our dashboard. I just change it and just mention that. Let's go to your dashboard here. Again, utilizing this link, I'm going to go to dashboard. At this point in time, again, a lot of data in here, so it's going to take a minute for this to load up. So as our map, we can kind of see this. I can very quickly, and I believe this is where it's going to be changing. For example, I'm in District 1. As I change this filter here, it populates and updates all these other tables that are associated with it. The map should update as well. It's just taking a little bit. There we go, cleans up here. So I can very quickly select through here, to each asset, on-street parking. My district doesn't have any that are state maintained. Curb ramps, we have quite a few of them. We have 218 are not compliant, unfortunately. So those 218 are put on our watch list. So when we have a capital project through that area, we do our best to add those curb ramps to that list. And again, I go through each individual element and you can see those as well. The other part here is that things will probably be changing as locals get access into here. I can be able to add a filter for a county, so I can either narrow this down further. Let's say I want to see Lima or Columbus or Dayton. That's something that should be able to very quickly select on this drop down and see that that information populate here. Again, utilizing this for a quick high level, where can you start looking at possibly spending your money, but not that anyone wants to talk about that, but you can very quickly see the information available. So that is the report. Okay, that is the dashboard. The reports, for example, as I mentioned before, I can be able to click on that link, as I mentioned here. And then as I come into here, into the report, we have two primary reports. It's a non-compliant QC. And then of course, our tech service division has made this summary report. So let me kind of look at these here. And these are by collection method, what we have had collected. You select on these as kind of like an FTP site. You select on it and then you will get that report that you're looking for. So right now that summary report was stating for a Q4 in 21, here's my collection for each of these assets and what district it were. So very high level, again, what was collected, what we have collected, and you can be able to isolate through here very quickly on these reports. Go back to the non-compliant QC. Again, I think these are pretty self-explanatory of what these define are. Just gotta get one downloaded. There we go. On my other screen. So as for a QC report, I can see to a specific curb ramp how many elements are missing and what values I need to update and make sure are compliant. So for example, I can see with this curb ramp here in my district, it needs some values for curb ramp, cross slope, and some other values as well. So right there's the file number it's referenced to. I can just come in here and copy that. Go back into our application. And as I just paste that into here and do a search, if I change my base map, sorry, give me 1 second. The aerial imagery, when you have your web application open, does take the most to process, and that's why it's just taking a little bit longer for this to run through. Make sure I'm looking at which one. All right, so this one here is the one I'm looking for, and I can very quickly see, from that report what needs fixed. I can then, at this point in time, come down here with these ellipses and say edit. So because that was on my compliance report, if I was out in the field, I can do the same search function, search for that file number, load it right up, and then be able to add my extra values that I so much missed in that collection method. So that out there, not going to update that one. And a non-compliant report does the same exact information. So let's go ahead and let me take us back to where we were today. So as I mentioned, the update attributes have finally completed. Go ahead and change this back with our imagery so we can see what we're looking at. So because of that non-compliance, as I ran this manually, I now have a red box around this, so I can be able to see as I was looking at a project corridor where things are not compliant and so forth. As of now, since this is the only one in this area and this collection, that is what I see at this point in time. A red box around this, and here's the information into here. So if I want to see why it was not compliant, again, if you knew the data, you could reference into here and see what was wrong. If not, I could come up here or come down here for the reports, and I want to update my not compliant reports. That takes just a moment to complete as well. Just give me a moment. My computer is running much slower today, of course, during presentation mode. All right, so now that is complete. I can come in here and just do a refresh, and I can see last time the report was updated, 12/14, that was the day at 2:52, that was now. So now if I select this one on download, open this report, bring this back over. I copied my file number that I was looking at. Of course, during live demo, didn't want to quite work. I'll have to take a look into that, see why for sure that did not come through here in this report. But what I was trying to just get to, this report does contain all the values for non-compliance into here. This one I may need to have our script take a look at. Again, typically the manual run of these reports do not happen that much, but if you did want, they were options available to be able to utilize that non-compliant report function. So that's something I'll have to take a look at and let you know how that works. So again, I didn't go over every application or every button available in these two programs. Definitely can go over it, but I think that's going to take this hour session into a couple hour session. I don't think everyone will stick around for that at the moment. So that is kind of pretty much the utilization of our web app and our collector application together, being able to utilize it from your office to the field, and how very quickly you can be able to find your report and get your dashboard information. So again, like I mentioned at the get-go, we pretty much started off with a printout of this report. We would take these values and kind of specify to each ramp, what location, draw a sketch, write down all the values. Yes, once we went from a printed out version, we went to Excel to be able to update, and then we can put the values in there and get the compliance quicker. But this is all itemized to a report. But utilizing an application like this, it's in a database, it's in there until you decide to retire it or delete it. which again, once it's in here, we have snapshots of the data, so we can retract any time by accident if someone deletes it. But that hasn't happened for a long time. But again, it's a repository of all the data. So if I wanted to change this to non-active status, I can definitely do so. So I'm going to say that is going to be the demonstration of the web application and the field map collection. For the sake of this presentation as well, like Sarah did, I tried to add this as extra references for you to be able to utilize and see if this is the best tool that you want to jump aboard with ODOT with. ODOT has provided a new measuring guide as well to our construction staff to assist where we take measurements at and in compliance with this application, or in compliance but with this application. So at that point in time, that was going to pretty much conclude the demonstration side I have. Sarah, if you have any more things you would like to talk, or we have on our panelist, Stephen Hale, which was one of our developers from Columbus in the data governance committee or data governance group that developed this application. If you have anything else, if not, I do not see any questions in the chat at this point in time.
Cody, there were two questions and I answered them both, but the one I just wanted to double check the answer with you. Someone had asked if there was a way to send a link of a particular asset in an email or text. I didn't think that there were, but I know that each asset, once it's entered, it's assigned a unique asset identification number. So I know that can be sent. But I wasn't sure. I think that's a good suggestion, though. If maybe we could utilize or have that as a suggestion for the next enhancement. I could see the value in that.
Yep, and I don't know if Stephen, if you can talk or not, but the only part I was going to mention off of that, Sarah, at this point in time for my reporting, I do not send a link directly to this ID number in a report. I do just send the value of it, but I can send a link to all their attachments. So for example, with this one here having two different attachments, there is a specific link in our code that I can send that can merge all these attachments into one link, if that makes sense. So,
sure.
If you do have a bunch of photos that your user is validating, that would be more beneficial, but the actual link to that segment, not that I'm aware of. So Stephen, I don't know if you can hear us or mention on that.
Hey, Cody. The only thing I can think of is we can build a link to the web map to a specific lat long. I mean, I could zoom in on that location, but I'm not aware of a way to link directly to a feature in the map.
Are there any other questions, Sarah, that we needed to clarify on that?
No, the other question was about the sidewalk data that we're collecting, and I did go ahead and answer that. So I think those were the only questions. Oh, well, hold on. I see another one came in. What would be required to be able to obtain login credentials for the application? Okay, I'll let Stephen or Cody handle that.
So that part there, I'm going to divert that to Stephen, but from the discussion so far, I guess, Steve, I'll leave that to you.
Yeah, so there's going to be a process where if you guys as locals want access to this, you will send a request. I believe, Sarah, that request right now will come to you and your team for review. And
yeah,
then
that's the way I understand. Yeah.
Okay, and if that's approved, then it'll be sent to essentially sent back to you, and you'll request. So there's a way that you can request access through is called My ODOT. Many of you might already have My ODOT accounts if you use it for other things like safety analysis or something like that. But and then there's another group here that we work closely with that will provide access to this application. So it's all done through your My ODOT credentials, and you will have to download the Field Maps app on a device. We support Apple iPads and iPhones right now, but the application does work on Android as well. We just don't technically support it. So if something breaks on your end, then I don't know if we'd be able to resolve it. One other thing to note is that when we do provide access to you as a local, you will be seeing a slightly different view of what Cody demonstrated today. We will put you in a special group just for locals that will give you access to edit, create new and edit local inventories only. So as part of that, you'll be required to do one extra step when you create data. You'll have to indicate the jurisdiction, whether it's municipal, village, township, or county. And then our overnight process will go ahead and assign a FIPS code to that asset. And then you on the back end, when you go to use this or consume this data, you'll just have to query on that FIPS code to get your information. So we're not planning to create separate dashboards or reports for every local agency, but you will be able to access your data via FIPS. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much. Sorry, I didn't unmute myself.
Again, I think that definitely reiterates to the questions and polls after this Sarah's interested in. So if you can take that time, she does definitely appreciate that. And we definitely appreciate that. And yeah.
Yes, so I just wanted to thank everybody for their time and attention today. We are very excited about being able to provide this as a tool for local governments to use for their data collection efforts. It has been a long time coming. We believe that it's a really great tool, and we feel very, very excited about being able to provide this tool for locals to use free of charge in order to help and assist with their data collection efforts if they so choose. So please, like we've mentioned, please fill out the survey so we can kind of start gauging anticipated amount of users so we can make sure we have the tools and processes in place for that rollout. Thank you all very much.